العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I welcome you all to this insightful and much needed session today presented by Pakistan Central Region Student Committee on the platform of International Open University. Before we begin, allow me to introduce myself, the speaker, and the university. I am Ariba Yasuf Khan, a student of BS Psychology at International Open University, and also serve as the chairperson for Pakistan Central Region Student Committee. The International Open University is a globally recognized online institution founded by Dr. Bilal Phillips, a renowned scholar and educator dedicated to spreading authentic Islamic knowledge integrated with modern education. IOU provides students worldwide with accessible, high quality, and Islamized education through flexible online learning. One of the most unique aspects of IOU is its integration of Islamic teachings into every discipline. Unlike other universities that often separate religious and secular studies, IOU ensures that all the knowledge is deeply rooted in Quran and Sunnah, making education beneficial not only for our dunya but also for our akhirah. The university offers a wide range of programs, including degrees, bachelor degree, master degrees, and diplomas in Islamic studies, psychology, business administration, education, information technology, Arabic, finance, and Islamic banking. With its flexible online structure, IOU allows students from diverse backgrounds to pursue their studies without compromising their personal and professional responsibilities. Now, moving forward to our session, I'm honored to introduce our guest speaker, Sister Aimen Attar. Sister Aimen Attar is a herbalist, prophetic, and Islamic medicine researcher who has dedicated her life to helping people heal naturally. With years of experience in holistic healing and prophetic medicine, she has guided countless students and professionals toward living in harmony with nature and the Sunnah. Alhamdulillah, we are now in the final days of Ramadan, the most sacred and spiritually intense part of this Ramadan. As we approach the last 10 nights, it is the time for deep self-reflection, purification, and seeking Laylatul Qadr. With that, I invite Sister Aimen Attar to share her knowledge with us. Sister Aimen, the floor is yours.
الله خيرا. بسم الله ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي امري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. السلام عليكم everyone.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
So I'm just going to share my screen inshallah so you can all see the presentation. So what I'd like to do today is I want to really focus on how we can turn hunger into healing. First, I do want to introduce myself. Although you've introduced me, I just want to give a little bit more information. My name is Aimen Attar, and in Arabic, Aimen means faith, and Attar means herbalist. And so ironically, my first name and my last name really did come together into the career that I'm in right now. I didn't actually choose this career. It sort of chose me. I became sick about 11 years ago. I developed an allergy to peppers, and that allergy in my adulthood really just changed my life. It changed the way I had to eat. It changed the way I saw medicine. It just exposed a lot of things to me. And so I've spent the last 11 years trying to understand health from an Islamic perspective. So I've become a researcher. I wasn't that before. I had a different career in corporate. So by necessity, in order to help myself and then to help my children, I became a researcher, and then I became an author, starting to research and write books. And I really consider myself a reviver of prophetic medicine, Islamic medicine, herbalism. And I've really made it my life's mission to instill the love of Islamic tradition in the hearts of every member of your home. So a lot of my students will find that the knowledge that they're acquiring doesn't just affect them and their health, it's starting to spread to their children, to their spouses, to their families and friends. And that's because the knowledge isn't from me, it is the nur from Allah that He's given us. Alhamdulillah, the knowledge about health and wellness has been preserved for thousands of years by Allah Azza wa Jal, and especially because of the Quran and the Sunnah, we have this information that's, in authentic narrations. Um, the, the the lesson today that I want to share with you guys is actually from a book that I've written called The Ramadan Remedy. Now, the first time I wrote this book, the first edition, I wrote it in 2018, so about 7 years ago. And the reason why I wrote this book is because I was actually quite sick at that time. I was in and out of hospitals, and I didn't think I was going to live to see that Ramadan of 2018. I really thought that I was dying. And so that I didn't die with the knowledge all with me, I wanted to make sure that I'd leave something behind, something that I could give away for free, something that could benefit people for generations to come. And so I wrote the Ramadan Remedy, the first edition. And alhamdulillah, for about 7 years, a lot of people have benefited from it. This year, I decided, about 10 days before Ramadan, subhanAllah, I decided, you know what, I really should just go back and revamp the book, like edit it, make some changes. And instead of just making edits, I ended up revamping the entire thing. So there's so much more new information. If you've read the first one, this book is completely different, although it is the same title as the second edition. I still take the main premise of that first book, but I've really expanded on it so much more. You can download your free copy at propheticmedicine.com/Ramadan. So this is going to be available to everybody. The lesson today is just a short example from what's in the book. The book is a lot more expanded. Obviously, we're limited with time, but in the book, I'm able to share a lot more details, alhamdulillah. So the main hadith that I want to focus on for this entire lesson is this rule of 1/3. And many of us have heard this hadith, which states the son of Adam does not fill a vessel worse than his stomach. It is sufficient for him to eat a few morsels to keep his back straight. But if he must eat more, then let him allocate 1/3 for food, 1/3 for drink, and 1/3 for air. Now, the interesting thing is that, when you read these hadiths in Arabic and then you read them in English, it doesn't always carry the same meaning. When you read, he needs a few morsels to keep his spine straight, but if he must eat more, then let him allocate 1/3. This almost makes it sound like, well, if he's hungry or if his body really needs it, he's allowed to eat more. But in Arabic, it's actually quite different. The words that are used in Arabic carry a much deeper significance. And it says, فإن غلبت فإن غلبت عليه فإن غلبت فإن غلبت آدم نفسه. So if his nafs overpowers him. So again, the Arabic meaning for it is very different from what we read in English. If his nafs overpowers him, then let him allocate 1/3 for food, 1/3 for drink, and 1/3 for air. Now, this is quite different in terms of meaning. Really, this hadith is telling us that we don't need much food to keep our back straight. We don't actually need 1,500 calories or 50 grams of protein a day or 8 glasses of water a day. The concepts that we have from modern medicine and modern nutrition is not in line with what the Sunnah teaches. Again, the Sunnah teaches there's nothing worse that we could fill no vessel that's worse that we could fill except that other than our stomach. So our overconsumption of food, us following these modern diets, these Western diets, nutrition from these gurus. I've seen people who are on like the carnivore diets, the keto diets, the paleo diets. All of these things are so against the Sunnah because they're not focusing on how little we should eat. They're actually focusing on how much you should eat of one group. Like you could eat whatever you want. You can have 12 eggs and a steak and an avocado for breakfast in these carnivore diets. But the Sunnah is actually that you actually need very little. But if you have to eat more, if really your nafs is just hungry and your nafs is unable to be restrained, then you should allocate 1/3 for food, 1/3 for drink, and 1/3 for air. So then I guess the next question is, well, how much is a third? Really, most people don't realize how small their stomach is. I actually have a display of the stomach, and this is about 1.5 times bigger than the actual size. If you look at this, I mean, if you look at the size of my fist, this model is about the size of 2 fists. But really, the natural size of the stomach is about 1 fist that's closed. And if you look inside, once you're inside the stomach, how much can you possibly fill in here? Now, yes, your stomach can expand. When we eat, our stomach expands, but it doesn't have the entire space of the abdomen. The stomach is actually quite small. It sits between the ribs and above the intestines. And again, if you put your fist right between your ribs, you'll see that's how big your stomach is. Now, if you're going to expand it with food, the maximum capacity is 1 liter to 1.5 liters. Again, depending on your size. If you're someone who's 5 foot tall, you're probably going to lean more towards the 1 liter. If you're a 6'5" man who's doing labor, hard work outdoors, he's going to probably have a much bigger stomach, which is 1.5 liters. A 1/3 of 1 liter is about a cup and a half of food. That's it. 1/3 is just a cup and a half of food. It's such a small amount. If it were 1.5 liters, then we could say maximum 2 cups of food. If you were to measure 2 cups of food and put it on your plate, you would see that's very little food compared to what we normally eat. And so the optimal, and this is at maximum. Remember, the hadith says, and if your nafs, overtakes you, then this is the most that you should eat. For us, we're actually eating a whole lot more than that. We're filling it until the rim. We're usually quite uncomfortable. This is what causes bloating. This is what causes acid reflux. This is what causes indigestion. This is what causes people to feel fatigued. There's so many negative side effects of filling our stomach. In fact, in most of traditional medicine, if you go to Greek medicine, if you go to Islamic medicine, the prophetic medicine, all of these traditional medicines, even Chinese medicine and Ayurveda, you will find that they really value fasting and reduction of food and these hemia diets, which is like the protective diet, so that people are actually eating less in order to heal. And we have this concept that's kind of backwards in North America and in the West, where you need to eat more, you need to eat this, you need to eat every few hours. Like I coach people on their health. I do coaching sessions, and I hear the things that people come tell me. Well, this doctor said I need to eat this much, or I heard and I read in this blog or article that I need to eat this much. And it's always way more than what our body needs. And when we give our body more than it needs, it's not going to process the food properly. It's not going to digest it well. It's also going to maybe extract too much nutrients, which is why people end up with high blood sugar, high cholesterol, high blood pressure. All of these excess diseases come from the fact that we're eating excessively. There's a huge correlation between our health and the way we're processing and consuming food. But then the question is, why do we overeat? If we're only supposed to have a few morsels, and then if at most it's only a third, why are we all overeating? This is not just you and I, this is like international. Everywhere where people have access in first world countries, you're going to find that people are overeating. Food at the time of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was a lot simpler. It was straightforward. They were making decisions based on what was available, what was locally and seasonally available, what was accessible. It was simple. They didn't go out of their way to, hunt down specific foods or meals or even produce. Our modern challenges actually is because we have so much abundance and there's so much food marketing and this whole industrialization, it's complicated our relationship with food and our food choices. What ends up happening is that we have so much access. I mean, I could cross the street right now and it's still quite cold in Canada. We're around 5 degrees, sometimes -5. It's spring in Canada, but it's still quite cold. But if I cross the street right now, 5-minute walk, I can pick up watermelon, I can pick up mangoes and papayas, but these don't grow in this season. So even though they're considered healthy foods, when I'm eating them out of season, I'm actually causing an imbalance in myself as well. So they didn't have to deal with these types of issues. They didn't have to, they didn't have access to this much abundance. So obviously eating less was a lot easier. Now, we live in a time of affluence. And Aisha radiallahu anha narrated to Urwa, she said, "Oh, son of my sister, we used to see 3 crescents in the month, and no fire used to be made in the houses of Allah's Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, meaning nothing used to be cooked. 3 crescents meaning 2 full months. 2 full months in all 9 houses, because the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was married to 9. There was nothing that used to be cooked. I don't think any of us could even imagine that. So Urwa said to her, "What used to sustain you?" And Aisha replied, "The 2 black things, dates and water. Except that Allah's Messenger ﷺ had neighbors from the Ansar who had some milk from she-camels, and they used to give the Prophet ﷺ some of their milk to their houses, and he used to make us drink it." So from time to time, in these 2 months, they would get some milk. But look at how little access to food they had. And this wasn't their entire this wasn't the entire time. This was at a certain time that they had this very little access to food. But I just want you to sort of have this as an idea in the back of your head that we can't even imagine what that's like. You have to remember, at the time of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, they did not have fridges. They did not have canned foods. Um, they did not have pantries that are stocked up the way we do. If you opened up your pantry right now, you could probably eat for the next maybe week or 3 weeks or months because of how much we have stocked up in our pantry. They didn't have access to the things we had. They didn't have milk in their fridge at all times. You could open the fridge now and get milk all the time. Milk was something that had to be milked fresh and delivered and given to the person at that time. So you have to understand that our access to food is so much more, and people are competing for our dollars through food, and people are appealing to the nafs because they know that the nafs is an insatiable beast, and people are marketing to the foodie nafs that they want them to eat this or have this dessert or go for this iftar at this restaurant, and there's these massive buffets of foods to choose from. Well, what happens is that when you're exposed to so much, then your nafs is going to be much bigger, and you're going to be consuming a lot more than your body actually needs. Now, again, imagine this is a hadith at the time of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu narrated that Allah's Messenger ﷺ said, the food of 2 persons is sufficient for 3, and the food of 3 persons is sufficient for 4. In another narration, it actually says the food of 2 people is sufficient for 4, and the food of 4 people is sufficient for 8. So imagine this is at their time. At their time when they didn't even have the access to food that we have, and this hadith was relevant for them as it is now. So we really have to rethink about how much food do we actually need and how much are we actually consuming. And I know for a lot of you right now, it might be iftar time because this is a global audience. You might be having iftar. The more food you get to look at, the more food that's accessible in front of you at the table, the more likely you're going to overeat and the more difficult it's going to be for you to restrain your hands from food. This whole shift really happened in the 19th and 20th century. Now, if you've been to any of my other courses or webinars, you know that I always talk about there was a major shift that happened 150 years ago. 150 years ago, they changed our concept of medicine. They also changed our concept of food, of nutrition. This whole industrialization changed everything. So eating like a sultan. So the meals that we eat today, our access to food today is really considered a sultan's diet. Like this is a sultan's lifestyle. It's very indulgent, it's very extravagant. But this became an everyday norm because of the way modern times change things. And so there's some historical, cultural, and technological developments that happened that have made it become so accessible for us to have this food. So the Industrial Revolution changed our food systems and how we grow food. Now, if you study the Sirah and if you study Hadith, you'll know that at the time of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, wheat is considered very difficult to access because it's very difficult to grow wheat. The abundant grain that they used to use would be barley. It could have been semolina or other types of grains, but wheat, the wheat that we have right now that's so accessible that all of us use almost every day, this was considered very difficult to grow, and they used to actually get it only from other regions like Syria. There's hadith that tell you that when you're giving zakatul fitr, you would give 1 sa of barley, but if you had wheat, then you would only give half a sa. That's because the difficulty of getting that wheat is almost like you can see that barley was twice as abundant as wheat was. So that it's not even measuring. Like you could give a sa of dates, you could give a sa of rice, you could give a sa of barley, but if you had to give wheat, you would give half the quantity. And so the Industrial Revolution changed that. They changed the way wheat was made. Again, in one of my classes, I teach about what happened to wheat. How did they change its production? What have they done to the wheat? Why is it making everybody so sick? So this is something that the way our food is being made has changed. Its accessibility has changed. So now our way of interacting and relating to these foods has changed. Refrigeration, the invention of the fridge, has actually changed the way perishable items are stored for long term. Most people didn't have access to milk every day, morning and night, any time of day in their fridge. They didn't have the ability to make lattes with their milk. They didn't have the ability to make smoothies with their milk. They didn't have this access the way we have, unless you were a dairy farmer and you had your own dairy that you could go milk your cows or milk your sheep at all times. Now, having access to things like meat and dairy and fresh produce always at our fingertips in our fridge, this is actually rare. And again, it means that, like, I mean, if you have to slaughter to eat, if you have to slaughter a cow to eat meat, you wouldn't, back at that time, you wouldn't have access to meat every day in your house because there's no way to refrigerate it. You could dry it. They used to cure them, um, but it's not the same. It's not like having ground beef. When you have cured meats, it's a very different taste. And again, relationship to that meat is very different from the way we're eating meats today. And again, having access to things that are international, that are out of season, that we're always accessing. I mean, I know people who eat bananas all year round. And then I tell them, but bananas don't grow all year round. They don't grow in your region. If you're in Canada, if you're in USA, if you're in UK, bananas would not grow in your region all year round, but you're eating bananas because it's high in potassium and you think it's a healthy food. But that doesn't necessarily work well for your body in that region, in that temperament, in that time of year. We really have to start changing the way we look at food and the access to food that we have. The more you try to eat locally, the more you try to get to know the local farmers markets, the more you learn about how food grows in your region, the more you're going to adjust your diet to actually align better for health that's better for you in the long term. Now, the thing with the globalization of food is now we have, really aggressive food marketing. If you walk into any grocery store, if you turn on the TV, if you go to restaurants, you'll see that everyone's competing for their dollar, for your dollar. And so restaurants will actually give you excessive food. They'll give you like huge portions so that it seems like it's worth it for you, right? People see that the value of the money spent is based on how much they're going to get in return, right? Now, this food marketing started to glamorize this indulgent lifestyle. So if you were able to eat out in a restaurant, or if you were able to order in these types of foods and eat these luxury meats, that was considered, it was associated, like through marketing, they started to associate luxury eating with success and happiness. And you see this if you turn on the TV, or if you go on any social media, you'll see when they're marketing things, they're always trying to sell a lifestyle to you. Now, everybody has this desire to be rich. This is like a natural instinct. We want more land, we want more animals, we want more money, we want more cars. This is a natural instinct that we all have. When people start to market this desire and say, if you want this luxurious lifestyle, then you have to eat this kind of luxurious meal, these meals that have meats and this and fine sauces and all of these desserts, this makes you feel like you're rich. This makes you feel like you're happy because you're able to access this. And again, food is the pleasure of life. Everybody loves eating food. And it releases, happy hormones inside of us, like happy, uh, yeah, I think they're hormones there, the serotonin and dopamine, these are all hormones. So it makes us happy on the inside. It makes us want to eat more. It reinforces that behavior. With this marketing, they also started to create fast food and snack foods and these rich desserts that were convenient and easy. If you had to make a cake yourself, if you had to make these fine desserts that we're eating and having so much access to, it would take a lot of time. It's labor intensive. Like if you've ever tried to make croissants, it's labor intensive to make croissants. It's not something you could make every day and eat it every day if you were doing it yourself. Even if you had to fry chicken yourself, frying food is very labor intensive. It gets really messy. Anyone who's the family cook doesn't probably like to fry because of how messy and how much work it takes. But when you're eating fried food constantly because it's easy from just going to the store and picking it up, or going to any restaurant and getting it, you're going to start to access food that would be difficult to make at home, but you have so much easier access to it outside. And this, again, makes it something you're going to overindulge in, because that labor that you're supposed to do really does reduce the frequency that you would do it. Again, if you were making your own breads every day, you're going to consume less bread because it's labor intensive to make your own sourdough bread every day at home. And so this access to conveniences has actually spoiled us, and it's fed our desire to start craving whatever it wants and getting whatever it wants. So things like cakes and fine pastries and seasoned meats, these are things that usually required skilled preparation. Some of the things that we have access to today are actually things that used to take someone, years of developing that skill. And now grocery stores and restaurants do compete for our business. So they're going to tempt us to spend our money with them in exchange for what they're going to give us. It might be bigger portion sizes, more desserts. This whole false sense of value is the exchange for our money. And the more we eat out, the more likely we're going to overindulge. The more we're spending our money on food from outside as opposed to making it ourselves at home, this controlling the nafs is going to be a lot more difficult. So the outside world, eating in restaurants, I mean, I had somebody that I was speaking to, she said to me, well, what do we do in Ramadan? Because all the iftars and restaurants are so appealing. They give you so much. It's like a whole experience. And I said, okay, if you need to have that experience, do it once. But to run from restaurant to restaurant, and I used to know people who would masjid hop for the food because some masjids offer iftars, and they would literally say, I'm going to masjid hop from this masjid to this masjid so I can have foods from different places. This isn't the point of fasting. And there's not going to be healing through fasting physically if we're only thinking about feeding the nafs. You know, this is actually quite contrary to what fasting is all about. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah says that there are 5 major corruptors of the heart, and this is in his work Madarij al-Salikin, the stations of the seekers. There's 5 things that corrupt our hearts. So excessively socializing, and you know, this is engaging too much in social interactions, and it distracts our heart from the remembrance of Allah. The other thing is that we might think, oh, we're not socializing, you know, I barely leave the house. But if you're on social media, you're constantly connected to others. You're constantly talking, texting, commenting. This is considered socialization. So we maybe the way we socialize today is different, but we still have excessive socialization. So this is also something to be aware of because it affects the heart. Wishful thinking, this is us having unrealistic desires, you know, and this will cause negligence in our duties towards Allah. So if we always have wishful thinking, people think that they're going to live forever. People think they're going to become multimillionaires. People are going to think they're going to become supermodels, right? This type of wishful thinking where you're just focusing on something that's unrealistic isn't really healthy for the heart. When we attach ourselves to anything other than Allah Azza wa Jalla, so forming these deep attachments to worldly things or people, this can divert our focus and our love from Allah. Excessive eating, so overindulging in food can lead to physical and spiritual laziness, plus other health issues. Now, again, most people don't realize that we are all excessively eating. So people think, oh, excessively eating means I'm doing X, Y, Z. They've given it a different outline in their heads, but I'm here to tell you that no, if we're eating beyond that 1/3 of the stomach, and the size of the stomach is really small, so if you're eating beyond 1 cup or 2 cups at most at a meal, you are eating excessively, and it's going to affect you physically, spiritually. It's going to affect your health. It's going to affect your heart. And the last thing is the excessive sleep. Sleeping more than necessary can result in missed opportunities in worship and remembrance. It also corrupts the heart. And again, this is another question where I get asked all the time as well, you know, how much sleep do we need? Because modern medicine says 7 to 9 hours. I do have a webinar that I'm going to be doing on April 12th, inshallah. So if anyone is interested, you can register through my website. It's going to be on restorative sleep. So looking at sleep through the lens of Islamic medicine and prophetic medicine. It's not what you think. It's not going to be the amount of sleep that modern medicine tells you. Sleep, just like eating, when it's excessive, it corrupts the heart. So I'm going to break down for you exactly how much sleep do you really need, both through science and through Islam, so that you understand that we actually, just like food, we don't need very much to function very well, inshallah. So then the question is now, what to eat? How do we learn to feed ourselves and nourish ourselves so we have energy, we have balance, and we're, nourishing the soul? The purpose of fasting is, and it again, this is mentioned in the Quran. Allah says, "O you who believe, fasting has been prescribed upon you as it was prescribed upon those before you, so that you may attain taqwa." Well, then I guess the first question we have to address is, well, what is taqwa? When Sorry, I missed one. Taqwa, as described by Ibn Taymiyyah, is creating this protective shield against Allah's wrath and punishment. This is achieved through the obedience to Allah through His commands, avoiding the actions that He has forbidden. And he underscores that taqwa is fundamentally about being mindful of Allah's presence and being cautious of anything that might incur His displeasure. So taqwa is really a form of self-discipline. It's how do you attain self-mastery so that you're not a slave to your whims and desires and your nafs. This is the whole purpose of fasting. 30 days so you could learn how do I discipline the nafs so that I'm not looking at the things that displease Allah. I'm not eating from the things that displease Allah. I'm not fulfilling desires in a way that displeases Allah. This is why fasting is so important. But if we fast all day, and that's restraining our nafs. But then at night, we're unable to control the nafs. Do we really attain that taqwa? When we become obsessed about what to eat in Ramadan, so that we minimize these hunger pangs and we have this fear that we might lose muscle mass or we might be fatigued all day, we start to overindulge in food at suhoor, iftar, and after tarawih. What we do then is we negate both the spiritual and physical benefits that fasting is supposed to provide. So hunger and thirst actually heals the body and the nafs, whereas satiety does the opposite. The more your body is satiated, the less healing is going on in your body. The more hungry and thirsty you feel, the more healing your body goes through. And this is healing both from a physical and a spiritual perspective. You will realize we're third week into Ramadan. We've got 9 days, 8 days maybe left. You'll realize that your appetite right now is much smaller than it was when we first started. You're also going to realize that your relationship to food has changed. Not many people are as obsessive about eating towards the end of Ramadan as they were in the beginning. It has reduced our energies, so we're not as people towards the end of Ramadan feel a lot more fatigue. So there is a change in how we approach Ramadan and how we end Ramadan. Our stomach size has shrunk. So towards the end of Ramadan, you'll notice we can't eat as much as we used to in the beginning. In the beginning, we might have filled our plates once or twice. Now we'll find towards the end of Ramadan, okay, I'm really actually sufficed with a lot less. And there's science behind why this happens, right? There's spiritual reasons why this happens, but there's also science physically as to why this happens. Fasting triggers biochemical processes in our body that uses stored energy, such as fat, when we're hungry and thirsty. So if you don't feel prolonged hunger and thirst, this process never takes place. When we have our normal days where we get up in the morning, we have our breakfast, 2-3 hours later, we have a snack, 2-3 hours later, we have something else, 2-3 hours later, there's a cup of coffee. There's this constant feeding into the system. You're never going to experience these biochemical processes. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained that we should at least once a year for 29 to 30 days enforce this biochemical process in our body. He forces us to do this. Now, these processes are inactive in the feeding period. So when we're constantly eating and we have nutrients always available in our system through food, through external measures, and because our body's still digesting food, these processes don't take place. When we allow ourselves to abstain from food, we go into what's called ketosis. And so a lot of people know this from the keto diet, but the keto diet kind of cheats. It really is focusing on you depriving yourselves of carbs in order for you to attain ketosis. But Islam actually gives you ketosis naturally through fasting in a healthy dose that your body can do well with without depriving the body. So ketosis begins usually after 12 hours when the external nutrients that we get from food are no longer available. So your stomach has to be empty for at least 12 hours for ketosis to sort of kick in. Now, what happens is when we fast, there are certain cellular repair and rejuvenation mechanisms that are activated. This only happens during fasting, and it's known as autophagy. And I know there's a lot of books written by non-Muslims now on the benefits of fasting. However, their fast is considered the intermittent fast, where they tell you to just abstain from food for 12 hours or 18 hours. They give you different windows, but it's not really the same as the Islamic fasting. And the reason for the difference is because our Islamic fasting is based on our circadian rhythm. So we actually run on a solar clock and on a lunar clock. Our body is connected to the times of the day as well as the times of the month. We have different biochemical things that happen in our body based on where the sun is in the day and based on the moon where it is in the month. Now, when you're doing the intermittent fasting through like these keto diets, it's not the same. It's based on you stop eating at 6 o'clock or 8 o'clock at night, you're fasting throughout the night, and then you have your breakfast at 12 o'clock. So really, it's not a true fast because it's not connected to your circadian rhythm. The other problem with that is that Islam doesn't allow you to fast every day consecutively for the rest of your life or for an entire year. we are ordained to fast 29 or 30 days consecutive for men, and for women who go through menses, it's a much shorter period than that. After that, we're allowed to fast every other day at most. So if you were to take the most extreme form of fasting that is allowed in Islam, it's called the fast of Dawood, which is fasting every other day. So you're not allowed to put your body in ketosis every single day for the rest of the year. Whereas a lot of these keto diets, they make you do these, year-long fast where every single day you're in this ketosis mode, fasting from 6 p.m. until 12 the next day. So this 16-hour fast or 18-hour fast that they make you do and only give you a short feeding window, this isn't actually, it's not going to be good for you physically. It's also against the Sunnah. There's so many issues with that. Again, that's an entire different lesson that I could do. But I urge you that if you're going to fast, then kill two birds with one stone. Fast in a way that's going to be pleasing with Allah, and you're going to get the ajr for it. So fast the Mondays and Thursdays, fast the 3 white days, fast every other day if you really want to push fasting as a healing mechanism for your body and something to attain more taqwa and bring you closer to Allah. But don't fast the keto methods. Don't do these evening fasts from 6 p.m. to 12. This is not the way to attain better health. So attaining taqwa, this profound awareness and consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this only emerges when our body is physically stripped of its nutrients. This is our innate fitrah. When you remove everything and we're stuck with hunger and thirst, now we see our vulnerability. Now we see our absolute dependence on divine sustenance, on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you're stripped, when you're thirsty, all you can think about is drinking water. You don't think about, becoming a supermodel. You don't think about, becoming a millionaire. You're stripped down to basic nutrients that your body needs. And this relationship to Allah changes. In fact, if you were to read the Quran cover to cover, which I hope all of you are in Ramadan, if you were to read it in search of sustenance, in search of everything that mentions food and drink in the Quran, you will be overwhelmed by the number of ayat that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about food in the Quran. I've done this exercise several times and I found that there's at least 100 ayat where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions our sustenance. And every single time he uses food in the Quran, or he uses rain or water or any animals that he references for our nutrients, or herbs that he mentions in the Quran, he always references it back to proving his own existence. So our connection to food really shows us our connection to Allah, because this is something that we need to survive, and we can only get this if he gives it to us. Because if he was to withhold water, we would all die. And he even says in the Quran, if he was to turn your sweet water into bitter water or salty water, we would all suffer. Right? So this relationship to food is really one of the biggest forms of developing our tawheed and our connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now again, if you're only coming into the month of Ramadan, if your only purpose of fasting is to think about, what kind of meals can we make? And I get really, I get really disheartened, especially before Ramadan even happens. I see everybody preparing foods and freezing it and preparing things and, shredding cheeses and making samosas and making foods, and their freezers are stuffed with food. Like, their entire concern for the month of Ramadan is making sure they have access to all the yummy things that they usually like to have in Ramadan. It would actually be better for us if we approach Ramadan with like simple foods, eating less, not eating meat at every opportunity, consuming small portions, like really allowing yourself to feel that poverty and that dependence on Allah. Because having all that access to yummy foods and freezing it and making sure that your entire table is spread like a buffet every night, it takes away from the essence of Eid. If you're celebrating every night with these feasts, it really takes away from the essence of Eid, of you being happy to celebrate on that day and have access to abundance of food, right? So I mean, I think there's a lot of room for us to change with regards to our relationship to food. And fortunately, because most of us live in the West, or we have access to social media, we are influenced by the West and their concept of food and their concept of nutrition and their concept of foodie nafs. This is all so destructive to us Islamically, that we really should be trying to focus on learning about food and nutrition from an Islamic perspective, that's aligned with the Sunnah, as opposed to, just what modern science might be saying, because sometimes modern science is wrong. And sometimes there's huge contradictions when it comes to our deen. Now, one of the things that happens when we fast, there's all of these processes that go on in our body. The first thing is our organs get a much needed rest. And now I want you to think about it. If you work all year round and you're working 18 hours every single day, and then your boss gives you 30 days where he says, you know what, you work 18 hours every single day the entire year. For 1 month, I'm going to let you just work 6 hours. I'm going to give you just 8-hour work schedule. I you can have a break from all that. You would enjoy that because you would be happy to work way less. But if in that short period of time, that 6 to 8 hours that he gives you, he still expects you to do what you do in 18 hours, it wouldn't feel like a vacation. And so your organs get tired of working every single day at digesting food. They also need a break. They also need to heal and repair. They can't repair themselves. They can't heal your body if you're digesting food. You can only do one or two. You could either heal or you could digest. You can't do both at the same time. And that's like the example that I give of like you can't drive your car and repair it at the same time. You can't be driving to your destination and repairing your car simultaneously. You either have to take a break from driving and park your car and let it be repaired, or you have to drive. You can't do both at the same time. So there's, our concept of how our body heals, thinking that by feeding it this, feeding it that, we're healing our body is untrue. Actually, removing food from the system, removing water from the system is how we allow it to heal. Now, when we fast, our organs, if we fast properly, are going to get a much needed vacation. If we don't fast properly, meaning our evening food time of feasting is extravagant and we're constantly feeding and our stomach is full and we're constantly adding more to it, it's not going to get a vacation. It's going to actually create more diseases in us if we do that. When we fast, our metabolic fire, our metabolism actually reignites. So because our metabolism requires nutrients, it's now going to turn to our inner supply of food, which is fat burning. This is what happens is that if you still need to run, this engine that we walk with every day still needs to run. If we don't have outside external access to food to nourish the body, then the body is going to turn to its own internal reserves. And we have a lot of it. Our liver stores nutrients for us, our fat stores nutrients for us. There's a lot of inner reserve that we have that we don't actually ever get to use because we eat all the time. So you have to allow yourselves to experience hunger in order for this external food supply to be cut off so that you could turn into the internal reserve. And once this happens, our hormone levels start to change. This allows the stored fat to become accessible as fuel and energy. Now there's an inner healing process that's initiated. So cellular repair happens, waste removal and detoxification begins. This is known as, again, autophagy. Toxins and waste are consumed in a process called autolysis. Insulin levels drop significantly, which affects and facilitates fat burning. Growth hormones increase, which affects fat burning and building muscles. Digestive secretions and enzymes are used to digest and neutralize and eliminate toxins from the body through the GI tract. And the most intensive detoxification and rebalancing happens in the first 3 days, after which your body does kick into ketosis, which means it's burning fat more efficiently and it's turning it into energy. But you'll notice in the first 3 to 5 days of Ramadan, almost everybody encounters headaches. They might get, digestive upset. Their gallbladder might act up. All of these things that happen are actually happening because of the healing crisis, because of the detoxification that we're going through. So when your body is detoxifying from 11 months of, junk that we've accumulated, in the first 3 to 5 days of fasting, you're going to have uncomfortable symptoms. You're going to have the healing crisis, which makes you feel worse before you become better. Again, now we're towards the end of Ramadan. A lot of us don't get these headaches anymore. A lot of us don't feel as fatigued. A lot of us feel light and energetic, and that we're able to function a lot better towards the end of Ramadan as compared to the beginning of our fast. So how do you eat to support this immense detoxification that your body and your soul is supposed to go through? Well, again, if we turn to the Sunnah, we're going to find everything we need there. And Rasulullah ﷺ teaches us that the most excellent suhoor of the believer is dates. And this doesn't suggest that you need to get up and have leftover biryani or leftover pizza and steak at suhoor time, which unfortunately a lot of people do this. They'll wake up at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning and they will eat leftover iftar meals for their suhoor. They'll warm it up and they'll eat it. This is actually one of the worst things you can do. And for several reasons. First of all, your stomach is still asleep at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. to expect it to digest heavy foods at that hour is really quite exhausting and creates more issues than it actually nourishes. And sometimes just the simple foods allow your body to extract what it needs. So the reason why dates are so beneficial for us is because they are hydrating. They contain the right amount of sugars and fibers that are going to stabilize our blood sugar. Um, and when the Prophet Muhammad tells us that this is the most excellent suhoor for us, this is what we should be having for suhoor. Now, if you download the book that I have, that I mentioned in the beginning about the Ramadan remedy, I do give you 27 different recipes. I give you 7 for suhoor, and I give you 7 for iftar, and I give you 7 drinks that are going to help facilitate your diet as well. So for the remaining part of Ramadan, and if you continue to fast after the Mondays and Thursdays and 3 white days, I really suggest that you try to implement some of those in your routine just to see how your body feels when you eat these lighter, easier to digest meals. So the meals that I've put together, most of them are from the Sunnah, and they're meant to help you digest your food easier and extract more nutrients and then remain sustained longer, inshallah. Now, it was narrated by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Suhoor is a blessed meal, so do not omit it. Even if you only take a sip of water, for Allah and His angels send blessings on those who eat suhoor." Now, again, this is completely different mindset from what we have today. Today we're told we should be eating X amount of food for suhoor. We should be drinking 3 cups of water for suhoor. You'll notice that the Prophet Muhammad had the opposite advice. He was saying that don't skip it. So at a bare minimum, a sip of water is enough to count as suhoor, a sip of water. Um, and there is blessings in it, not because of what you're actually getting from the water itself, but you're getting the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the angels sending blessings upon that suhoor, giving you barakah in what you eat. So unfortunately, the way we think is that we look at the food in front of us and we're calculating how much energy we're going to extract from that. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was to remove the blessing from that food, no matter what you eat, you could still feel fatigued, tired, thirsty, even if you drank a liter of water. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intends that one sip of water to nourish you, to remove the feeling of hunger, to sustain your energy, then you would be blessed with that. So it isn't what we see with our eyes and consume with our mouths, right? There is a spiritual element to everything we do because we are spiritual creatures and we are connected to Allah. So our sustenance is from Allah first, before it is from the food and drinks that we have. And we always have to, which is why we begin with Bismillah, we end with thinking Allah. We have to constantly be engaged in our relationship with food, connecting it back to Allah, and not to forget Allah when we eat, and not to overstuff ourselves with food, thinking this is going to bring me benefit. If you hold on to the hadith that the dates are sufficient and the sip of water is sufficient, then you will get the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to nourish you, and it isn't just from the food itself. Now, modern nutrition really conflicts with this teaching that we have. I've seen social media nutritionists posting you should have 3 cups of water. You should have a high dense protein breakfast, um, like meats or chickens or burritos or samosas, like really highly heavy foods that are dense, and so that you can sustain yourself longer. High protein meals keep you fuller longer. Yes, on a scientific perspective, they continue to sustain you longer when you have protein in your system. But from a sunnah perspective, you're not going to heal if your body's still getting nutrients from that food that you ate. Your body has to begin healing when that food is depleted in your system. So becoming hungry and becoming thirsty and feeling like you're starving and feeling like you're dehydrating, this is where the healing kicks in. It's not going to kick in if you've stuffed yourself with enough food to sustain you for 6 hours. Then only when your stomach is emptied and those nutrients have depleted does your body start to calculate the 12 hours for ketosis. And you may never achieve that if by the time you digest your breakfast it's 11 o'clock and your iftar is at 6 o'clock. Well, that's only considered a 7 or 8 hour fast for your body from a biological perspective. The prophetic sunnah really looks at hunger disciplines the nafs, and there's barakah and suhoor. And barakah is not proportional to the quantity of food that you eat. So a sip of water, a couple of dates, this is going to be enough to sustain you because it comes from Allah. And no matter how much we consume from that table, if the barakah from Allah and that blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us is not there, you will never feel sustained. There's also a lot of science that says the more water you drink, the more you're going to flush it out through urine, and the more thirsty you're going to become. So drinking a high quantity of water necessitates that your body flushes it out a lot more. So you're going to flush out a whole lot more water, and then you're going to feel a lot thirstier a couple of hours into the day. Whereas when your body feels like you're in starvation and dehydration, it conserves things differently. When you drink water through sips and not gulps, it conserves that nutrients and those energies in your body differently. And now, again, if we were to drink according to the Sunnah, Anas radiallahu anhu narrated that he used to drink from a vessel in 3 draughts. And Anas said that I saw the Messenger of Allah sallam, that he used to drink from a vessel in 3 draughts, meaning you're drinking in 3 breaths. If you were to take a cup of water and you would take a sip and a sip and a sip, and you're breathing in between each one, you're not going to be able to gulp down water like 3 cups of water in a short period of time, the way a lot of these nutritionists are advising. If you were to sit and sip water, it's going to take you a lot longer to finish 1 cup. And sipping is a lot more beneficial than gulping down water because of how it affects your digestive system, how it affects your digestive enzymes and your stomach acid. Dumping a huge amount of water into our stomach at once is actually quite unhealthy, and this was already mentioned in the Sunnah for us as well. And when we're breaking our fast, again, Anas radiallahu anhu narrates that the Messenger of Allah said, whoever has dried dates, let them break their fast with that. Whoever does not, let them break their fast with water, for indeed water is purifying. Again, the first thing that we're told to do is we're supposed to break our fast with dates. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't instruct us to drink 1 to 2 cups of water because we're dehydrated. And now, if we analyze what we are instructed to do, it's fascinating that we're instructed to have dates first. Well, again, dates stabilize the blood sugar. Dates enter into the bloodstream first. The fastest food to be digested and to enter into the bloodstream is dates. And the other thing is that when you're eating dates, the sugar in dates sends a signal to the brain, the fastest signal to the brain, that food has come to the system, so to reduce the hunger hormone. So if you don't break your fast with dates, you might feel hungry even if you've been eating for 10 minutes. Whereas when you start with dates, your brain starts to get the signal that sugar has entered into the bloodstream, we're stabilizing, we're safe, reduce the hunger hormone. And so you're likely to less overeat when you've had dates first versus when you just dive right into the food. Because the food, the soups, the steak, they're not going to have sugar. Sugar is what stabilizes the body, and sugar is what's controlled in the brain. Based on hunger hormones are controlled with sugar. Again, I do an entire lesson on sugar in my mentorship program because sugar has been demonized, but sugar is the fuel that the body runs on. And if we don't understand how sugar is required for our body and where we're supposed to get it from, we're actually working against our body when we're eating these modern nutrition diets like keto and all of these things that deprive you of natural sugars. And I know people who don't even eat honey because they think honey is bad because it's a glucose, it's a sugar. We are designed to run on sugar. That is our fuel. In fact, the only thing that your brain functions on is glucose. It does not take in fat as energy, and it does not take protein as energy. Your brain only functions on glucose, which is why a lot of people feel a little bit more fogged or tired or not as sharp in Ramadan because they're not getting any glucose throughout the day. So this is, again, there's so much to learn. It's hard to fit it into all a 1-hour presentation. There's so much to learn about how your body functions and how your body requires nutrients from an Islamic medicine perspective. But again, these hadiths really should open up our eyes. And the more we follow them, the more we feel better in our health. So breaking your fast with dates, again, is going to stabilize your blood sugar first. It's going to nourish you. If you don't have access to dates, then you can break your fast with water. And again, you're sipping water, you're not gulping 2 cups of water just because you're breaking your fast. So if you want to think about what to eat, less is more. If your body gets access to a very small quantity of food, it's going to be better able to digest it. You're going to attain higher levels of energy, and you're also going to get more barakah from your food. Whereas when you're seeking this maximum satiation from your meals, you overburden your system and you put your trust in the food as energizing, so you lose even the barakah. Like if you focus on the hadith that eating less is better for you and you're able to implement that, you're going to find that your energy levels, your digestion, your health, everything is going to improve because you implemented that. You had to believe it in your heart first, then you had to implement it with your actions, with how you. So even something as simple as sourdough bread and butter, grass-fed butter, is actually very nourishing because the bread comes with its own proteins, it comes with its own fibers. The butter has its own minerals and nutrients and fats that are healthy for us. So even something as simple as just having sourdough bread with butter, 1 or 2 slices as a meal, is actually quite nourishing for the body. It's not just an appetizer that people serve you in a restaurant, right? It's enough nutrients to sustain you for hours if you just had a good piece of sourdough with grass-fed butter. Now ease into your suhoor. If you think about it, your body is not used to eating at that time of day unless you used to get up at that time to eat. You really have to ease into it. If you wake up 30 minutes before Fajr, you want to eat something simple. So dates, it could be dates with butter, it could be dates with cucumber. I provide some recipes to help you. You could make some simple foods, but I wouldn't give anything to my body that's going to be hard to digest. I would not eat any proteins at this time unless it was eggs, but I would never eat chicken. I would never eat steak at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning at suhoor time because my body is still asleep. My digestive system is still asleep. I need to ease my body into that. And again, the sugar from the dates wakes up the body. It kicks in that metabolism that the body is supposed to go through, which is interesting because if you think about it, when we do tahniq, when a baby is born, it's said that the parent or someone righteous should chew some of the dates and then use that date to stimulate the digestion of the baby. So you put that tahniq, that date, into the baby's mouth. Well, scientifically, they figured out that it's because the sugar from the dates actually kickstarts the baby's metabolism, and the baby's digestive system starts to work because of the sugars found in the dates. Now, in hospitals, when you have babies in an ICU, they actually inject them with like sugar syrup. They give them sugar syrup in their mouth or in their bloodstream so that they can kickstart that metabolism for them, so that they can feel hunger and they can eat. But again, I think we really look at dates as such a simple thing that we sometimes don't give it much thought. It is really a meal. The Prophet Muhammad sustained himself with dates for 2 months, him and his 9 households. They sustained themselves. There's enough protein, there's enough nutrients, there's enough sugars and fibers in dates that if all you ate was dates for a meal, it would be sufficient for you. So a few dates, a few sips of water, just kind of listen to your body and don't overeat. And please don't eat leftovers that are heavy from the night before. They're not suitable for a breakfast. They're not suitable for a way to start your body to digest. If you give your body something hard to digest, it's going to spend so many hours trying to break that down, and it's not going to focus on healing your body because you're not eating during that time. It also will create excessive thirst. Anybody who eats anything that's hard to digest is going to experience a lot more thirst than somebody who eats a light meal that the body can work with. And then you get more lethargic if your body is struggling with the foods that you're eating. Iftar is really the big test of discipline. So if we want to break free from the chains of gluttony and how we approach iftar, we're either going to reinforce our gluttonous behaviors or we're going to form healthier ones where we discipline ourselves and have a healthier relationship to our hunger and self-control. So break your fast with dates, take a few sips of water, pray your maghrib, really distance yourself from food if you can. And again, it's not haram to eat immediately and then get up to pray. I'm just suggesting that this gives you an ability to discipline the nafs when you do it that way. It also allows your stomach the ability to reboot slowly after being turned off for the entire day. So now it starts to kick in. Once that sugar enters into the system, you're going to actually start to feel like your digestive juices are working again, and you're going to be able to digest your meal better. And you're less likely to overeat when you've given that yourself that distance. Again, if you were to have that sugar from the dates, and then you were to pray and then come back, there's about 5-10 minutes of time that has lapsed since the dates. And that gives your brain enough time to get that signal that food is coming, reduce the hunger hormone. We're not going to starve to death, right? So you're less likely to overeat. There are unpleasant side effects of fasting because fasting is a natural detox. We might experience headaches, bloatings, fatigues, and cravings that can make fasting an unpleasant experience. So I want you to think about it this way. Fasting is like a deep cleanse of your body. sort of how like you would clean your house. Now imagine you haven't cleaned your house in 11 months. You've neglected it. Maybe you went away for a year and you come back. Now you're walking through this house. It hasn't been tidied in a year. There's cobwebs in the corner. There's dust everywhere. You might even have insects and rodents in places in your house, right? Your body undergoes a similar process. You have months of overeating, of indulging in foods that are processed. You have irregular digestion that's creating buildup of toxins and metabolic clutter and waste. Now, when you fast, your body's going to start this autophagy, a natural process for cleaning these damaged cells, these toxins and excess waste that's going to be removed. The old weak cells are going to be broken down and replaced, and then inflammation is going to decrease and digestion is going to reset. So it's a major reboot for the system. This is why the Sunnah recommends a minimum of fasting 3 white days of every month to form a healthier relationship to food, to detoxify the body every month, to build our taqwa, and to remove these byproducts that we're consuming and accumulating in our body. So those who fast the 3 white days every single month, or the Mondays and Thursdays, by the time the next Ramadan comes, they don't experience the unpleasant side effects as much as those who haven't fasted in 11 months, right? So it's a lot harder to do the cleanup if you've abandoned it for 11 months. It's a lot easier if you maintain it on a monthly cycle. Now, I actually want you to think about something. Because I did the math, I wanted to calculate how many days do we fast in a year if we were to fast all the Sunnah days. So you fast the month of Ramadan. You also fast the 3 white days, the Mondays and the Thursdays, the 6 days of Shawwal. You fast the 9 days of the Hijjah. You fast Ashura. If you were to calculate all of these days, and maybe I'll ask you guys to answer it. If you were to fast these, how many days do you think it is if you were to fast all of these Sunnah days? Does anyone want to? 50 days? Any other guesses? Almost. So if you count Ramadan, Ramadan is about 30. All of these additional days, if you were to fast every Monday and Thursday, the 3 white days, and all the other Sunnah days, I did the math and it turns out to be 170 days. Now, the Islamic calendar is only 355 days because we have 10 days less compared to the Gregorian calendar. So 170 is about half. So again, if you remember the fast of Dawood every other day, that would be the most. And we're not talking about the fast of Dawood. We're talking about the recommended fast from the Sunnah. Half of that year is beneficial for us to abstain from food throughout the day. So do you see how if we were to actually implement the Sunnah to its fullest, we would not be eating as much as we eat. We would not be experiencing some of the health issues that we'd be experiencing. Our relationship to food would change. Our self-discipline would change. Our nafs would change. And food and our nafs is a gateway to other sins. So the more we are able to discipline ourselves with food, the more we're able to discipline ourselves with other sins and temptations that we might face. Now, the healing crisis is this thing that we go through, the unpleasant side effects when we start fasting, because it's a natural detoxification. There's going to be a breakdown of fat cells. So when our body turns to fat and it breaks it down so it can use that energy, fat stores a lot of toxins. And so this detoxification is going to make you feel ill, especially in the first 3 to 5 days. Some people might experience flu-like symptoms. They actually think, oh, I'm getting a flu, I'm getting sick. It may not be the case. It just may be because your body is being flooded with toxins and that your immune system has to kick in to fight them off, that it feels like you're sick, but you're not really sick with the flu. You might get shakes and chills. You might get muscle aches and pains. You might experience headaches and migraines. You might get more gallbladder attacks. You might feel nausea and vomiting. Your skin could get a lot worse in Ramadan. And the reason for that is, again, because of the detoxification, because the liver is being cleansed. The skin is where a lot of these toxins can be released from. So sometimes if your skin gets worse in Ramadan, it's because the toxins are released through the skin. You might experience constipation, IBS, or other digestive issues. So these are part of the negative side effects of fasting. And these would be less if we ate the right foods during Ramadan. If we had the right suhoor, if we had the right iftar, if we hydrated our body with the right herbal drinks and natural mild laxatives, then all of these issues would really minimize if we were to eat properly. So I want you to imagine if you were weight training for 12 hours a day, you're running on the treadmill, you're lifting weights, and then you come home and you eat fried chicken, donuts, and sodas. Does that make sense for all the effort that your body did during the day? If you worked out and really exhausted yourself in weight training and then only to come home and eat fried chicken, donuts, and sodas, does that make sense? Does that even fit together? The intense detoxification that we go through, this 12 to 18 hours during our fast, is going to have side effects and negative side effects if we're eating our fill, if we're consuming too many kinds of foods at the same time. So we're burdening our body to digest complex meals. And I know people do this with smoothies. They think, oh, smoothies are a healthy meal. I'm just going to throw in some spinach and chia seeds and flax seeds and avocado and um, banana and dates and almond milk. And they throw in all of these different things, and they're really only thinking about the nutritional benefits of these foods. They're not thinking about what happens to my stomach when it gets this massive dump of nutrients in it from conflicting things. What is the body supposed to do? So sometimes we give the body too many instructions. Sometimes we're combining foods that are growing in different regions, different seasons, all into one drink, and we're drinking it in a massive gulp. Uh, and the body needs to chew food to start digestion. So digestion begins in the mouth. So when we're drinking our meals, it's not always beneficial. So I'm not a fan of smoothies. Um, Unless you're a child that doesn't eat well and you need to supplement them with more food, then we would give them a smoothie to sort of boost their nutrition. But you really need to make sure that you're not just relying on smoothies for nutrients, because it bypasses the mouth chewing the food to start digestion. And so it doesn't really sit well in the stomach. Consuming carbonated beverages also interferes with the digestive process. Even if you're drinking a diet soda, you might think, okay, it's diet, I'm not going to have any sugar issues. But the actual acid and carbonation in that drink interferes with digestion. It changes the process that's supposed to happen in the stomach. So now your stomach is not going to be able to absorb that food properly. It's not going to be able to break it down properly. Some of these are the reasons why people get acid reflux or GERD, or bloating or pain after they eat, or they're exhausted, they're more tired. Um, Eating a heavy meal at every opportunity, whether it's iftar, suhoor, after tarawih, every day of the month for the entire 30 days, this is really exhausting for the body. So again, the objective of fasting is to starve the body, give it less, let it do its own work that it needs to do. So try not to eat a heavy meal that has protein or meats or chickens or fried samosas at every meal. Try to really have at least one meal a day that's light. And then avoid nibbling on food throughout the evening. So if you are breaking your fast at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, and then you're nibbling on food the entire time until you go to sleep, your body never gets to fully empty. And again, I like to use the example of the washing machine. If you open the washing machine and you stuffed it to the rim and then closed it and started the wash, is it going to clean that wash? You've already stuffed it to the rim. There's no room for water or for the agitation to really clean it. Now, on top of that, every 20 to 30 minutes, you open that door to throw in something else and then close it, and then open that door, throw in something else and close it. Does the first wash ever get cleaned? If you're constantly opening that door to throw in something else, does anything ever actually get cleaned? And the answer is no. Your laundry would never be clean that way. And we do the exact same thing with our stomach. We constantly stuff something into it. So we eat our iftar, and then 20 minutes later we'll have a dessert, and 20 minutes later we might have a smoothie, and 20 minutes later we might snack on some seeds. And we constantly think that, oh, this is nutritious, this is beneficial, this has iron, or this has magnesium, or this is going to be good for my skin. There's all these health gurus out there that are telling you what this is good for. But in reality, it's not going to be good for you if it's not needed and not going to be absorbed properly at this time. So try to avoid that continuous nibbling. Like, I really say that once you've eaten, kind of like stop eating for 2-3 hours. Make sure that nothing enters into your system for 2-3 hours except for sips of water or sips of herbal tea, but nothing that has more carbs, sugars, and fats, inshallah. Um, Again, I want to remind you to download the Ramadan Remedy book, because it has a lot more information than what I was able to give you in this 1 hour, inshallah. If you have any questions, I will open it up to questions right now, inshallah. And if not, then we'll sign off with that. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows you to continue to fast after Ramadan. So just because you've going to finish Ramadan in the next 7 to 10 days, please continue to fast, even if it's only the 3 white days. This is such a beloved sunnah, and it's so beneficial for your body, and it's so beneficial for taqwa and disciplining the nafs. that try to maintain 3 days a month. It doesn't, if you can't do the 13th, 14th, 15th because of your menses, you can still do it any other time. You could do it any time, so long as it's 3 consecutive days. 3 consecutive days is enough to reboot your system. So please try to maintain fasting after Ramadan, inshallah. Any questions? Ariba, do we have any questions, or should we
No,
sign off?
I think we don't have any question. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khairan for sharing your value of knowledge. Honestly, we have learned so much. We have learned so much things, and especially about the diet we should follow and the most important, how much we eat. Subhanallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and put barakah in your work. Jazakallah khairan for this session and for giving me such a precious time.
وإياك جزاك الله خيرا for having me. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. جزاكم الله خيرا, everyone. And I hope that you download the book. And inshallah, I'll see
Inshallah.
you at the sleep webinar.
Yeah, I already downloaded it. Alhamdulillah.
جزاك الله خيرا.
Ameen
السلام
wa
عليكم.
iyaakum. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah wa